Good morning, everyone, and welcome to RTN's official launch of a couple of new standards that we're releasing to the industry today. It's very exciting work. It's been a long time coming. A lot of work has gone into these efforts. I'm Angela Diffley. I'm the co-founder of the Restaurant Technology Network. And here today with me are several key contributors to this work. And today is a big day for us. We've been working on it for a really long time, and today is the official launch where we will share with you some of the great hard work that's been going on in these work groups that RTN executes every month. One is on the Open API Transactional Data Standard, and one is the Open API Customer Record Data Standard. You may have joined us not too long ago for phase one of the customer record data standard. Today, we'll be adding on to that body of work with a little bit deeper dive into different areas of the customer record data standard. So we're happy to announce even more work that's been done towards that particular initiative. And in addition, the transactional data standard is alive and well and coming to you today on this call. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to dive right in here. So just a quick look at our agenda. I'm going to welcome all of our callers here and all of our panelists, especially our key contributors here that are going to be speaking to this work. Want to recognize our platinum members that make this work possible within the RTN. We will do some work group statistics where we show you how much time and effort's put into this really quickly. And then we'll dive into the customer record data specification and also the transactional data specification in particular, some of the attributes and things that we focused on when we looked at bringing these to the industry. So first, I'd just like to thank all of our platinum members at RTN. We have many more members than this, but these platinum members really kind of jump in the trenches with us and help support the initiatives that you are hearing about today. Without them, we would not be able to do the work that we do inside of RTN and bringing it to the industry at large. So just thank you to the logos you see there on the screen. And you know, one of the things we want to address is why this work is so important. If you just take a look at this ecosystem, if you will, restaurant technology ecosystem on the screen here, you can see several of the systems, and many of which maybe not even mentioned here, but this is a ever-changing, ever-evolving landscape of restaurant technology supplier solutions in each of these quadrants, if you will, or areas of focus for a restaurant operation. And if you can imagine, all of these things need to talk to each other. And how do all of these things even talk to each other when we have disparate systems at the core, right? So the reason that we are doing this work and the cry from the industry from the very onset of the Restaurant Technology Network was, we need integration in this industry. We need things to talk to each other. We need to be able to adopt more nimbly solutions that plug and play into existing architecture to, escalate the business, if you will. No matter if you're a one store unit or you're an enterprise global systems, systems looking for several different plug and play solutions that work globally. It's from the very simple to the very complex. Standardization fuels innovation, quite simply, and it takes out the headaches around integration. So that's what this team here on this call has really been hyper focused on. And we're pretty excited that we have some heavy hitting industry support behind these initiatives. I will just leave this slide up for a minute and let everybody read through some of the heavy hitting brand endorsement that we have. In fact, I think we have Phil Crawford on the call today. I wasn't sure if he's going to be able to join us because he's at a conference of his own, but Phil, are you there?
I am here. I'm hiding the camera on purpose because I'm at a conference. So yes, that way you don't see all the distractions behind me.
Well, no problem. We thank you for joining us. And I would love for you to just say a few words of, kind of speak to this slide a little bit. Obviously, we have Jim Vitek at Young Brands, Wade Allen at Brinker, and you here up on the screen. Pretty impressive crew. And I know that, one of your passions is standing behind the standards that RTN is moving to create. Tell us why that's so important for you.
Yeah, look, I'm humbled to be there with, my fellow peers at Yum and Brinker. I think we all kind of have the same ideology when it comes to these industry standards. It just becomes one larger ecosystem for us to all basically to speak the same language, right? That's super important as we continue to grow our marketing and technology stacks. bring in and bring out partners and so forth into the overall ecosystem itself. If we had it one overall language, we'll just call it English for lack of a better term, our communication would be much easier. And also then our speed to market and our advancements in technology to help foster the industry would be just more exponentially done quicker. I think that's the beauty of what we're trying to get done here. It's the enhanced integrations in and of themselves are kind of the catalyst for change. If you look at what's happened in the last several years, with the advent of COVID and what it's kind of, catapulted technology into the forefront of our industry, we now have the unique opportunity to kind of catch up and also leapfrog other verticals that already have some of these standards in place. And us not having that, and now eventually getting it to a point where we do have it, is only going to make everybody bigger, not just the three big brands you see on the screen there, but all of the independent operators as well. They may not have some of the agility that we do or the nimbleness to go and do these integrations. So it's an absolute wonderful endeavor for all of us to strive for and eventually achieve.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Very well said. I think to echo your sentiment, not only are we creating them, and frankly, one of the reasons we have the folks on the screen here is because we need adoption, right? And that really starts with the supplier community. So to our next slide, we have a couple of key suppliers who have also been key contributors to some of these initiatives. And as you can see here, we have Robert Peterson on the call from Oracle. But he's going to be moderating the majority of this call because he's actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Robert, been on every single one of our standards work groups and really been championing this from really, it's a work of passion for you, and we appreciate and value your leadership, and don't know if we could have done it, frankly, without you. So when you look at what's going on with some of the suppliers who are openly adopting, and even one down here, Rob Krupp, saying that he's looking to kind of create a validation type of platform whereby you can see if your coding and if your solutions are sort of validating to the open API standards that RTN is creating. We're so grateful for that. And that will be open source, right, for everyone to test against and use. So the message loud and clear here is not only that we've created these standards for the industry, but that we are making the plea for the suppliers on the call today and in the industry to adopt the standardization that we're putting out in the market. Robert, anything else you wanted to add to the slide?
I mean, you said it perfectly. I mean, step one was building it. Step two is driving for adoption.
Right. And so the Open API framework was our first body of work that really is the foundational element to everything else we're building upon it. And it is really an 8 key principles framework for what an open API even is. It defines it for the industry, and all of the logos you see on the screen contributed to that effort. That was the first stake in the ground that we did here at RTN before we started building these data models and other specifications that are sort of part and parcel to the open API framework. So with that, let's dive into the work. What do we have today? What have we built? Stephen Ellenson, AWS, I hope he's on the call. I hope he made it. He basically coined the term smart systems, dumb pipes, which we all love, right? We're not trying to use any proprietary technology to create a system here. We're talking about creating dumb pipes by where information flows in the same way, right? Uniformity and standardization amongst the things you see on the screen here. So we have released an open API framework, as I mentioned before this, that's 8 key principle foundational work. Springboarding from that, we released the menu synchronization specification. Then we have the customer record data and transactional data standards that we're going to be sharing with you today on the call. So these are the key 4 standards that we have put out into the universe from RTN. If you want to grab these, we'll put a QR code at the end of the call, but they're always open source. They're always open to anyone on our website. You can simply go to restauranttechnologynetwork.com, look at our technical documentation there, and we'll be pointing you there at the end of the call. So what was the customer record data phase 2 and what did it involve? This was kind of a sprint, if you will. Because we had already done phase 1. It took 3 months and about 6 meetings to put together the last phase of this, 78 hours of volunteer time. As you can see, an average of 7 participants. And we have some key contributors on the call today, facilitated by our friend at AHLA, Sandy Angel, who's an amazing moderator to our work groups that focus on standardization in this industry, and is also very instrumental in standardization across the hotel space. So here are our key contributors, some of whom are on this call. I want to do quick introductions. Tammy Billings with Avon will be guiding our customer record data information that we're going to share with you today. Stephen Ellenson from AWS, George Hutto from Mod Superfast Pizza is on the call. We have Robert Peterson from Oracle, Christopher Seeps from Results Through Strategy, and also Mark and Jason are also on the call today. They'll be contributing as well. So thank you all for joining. Tim Guerrero, unfortunately, has left PF Chang's, but he was so instrumental in so many of our efforts. So we thank him for being involved. These were the key contributors to phase 2 of the customer record data. And with that, I am going to hand it off to Tammy Billings, who's going to get us started and what this is.
Thanks a lot, Angela. Good morning, everybody. So before we actually dive into this, we want to iterate quickly what the customer data standard is not. It is not about the management of data, but rather the formatting and structure of the data collected. Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe there is a cybersecurity work group forming that will focus on more of these things.
We already have had a couple of cybersecurity work groups, and that work is out and on our website as well. Cybersecurity guidance and best practices, also cybersecurity operations guidance for the industry.
Great. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
Sure.
So Phil actually said it best when he summed up sort of why we were doing this initially, but it's like, why are we doing this? The goal of collaborating across operators and across suppliers is to create uniformity before it's needed, specifically data related to customers. Ultimately, this standard, if it's adopted widely, should reduce the time and complexity of any integration, benefiting both the operator and supplier equally. So a use case, you could say, imagine, I'm an operator, I want to work with vendor A, but I also want to work with vendor B. If the operator and both suppliers adhered to the standard, the time to value would be much faster and easier for everyone involved. Next slide. So this is just a quick glance at the earlier work we completed in phase 1. If someone on the RTN side could post the old or the original link, I have it. I can do it after the chat. But this is just a quick look at what we had created previously. Next slide. These are actual use cases, and I believe we actually covered these in our first session as well. So I'm not going to spend time reading through these. The biggest thing to note is that a lot of the use cases surround loyalty or online ordering. Both are great opportunities to collect customer data, things such as email, phone number, name, etc. And ultimately, we brainstormed use cases to see if we could satisfy them with the data schema we created. It's worth noting here, too, that implementing a CDP, a customer data platform, may handle some of these tasks, but there are still elements within each provider's data schema that should be consistent. And if those providers adopted these standards, it could even lessen the need for a CDP if you had a really strong IT department with developers. So next slide. What we recognized as we ended the phase 1 was that there was a ton more that could be collected about the customer. Data points that might not be as tangible as name or email or phone number. And so in phase 2, we focused on things like demographic, geographic, psychographic, everything you see here on the screen. These are more of the data points that enable hyper-segmentation and true one-to-one marketing. And it's worth noting here that there are many providers of this type of information, from Nielsen or partners like mine, like Visa and MasterCard. What matters in this exercise is understanding where those data points live within the customer record. Just to remember, this exercise is about the formatting and structure of the data and less about the actual input. Meaning one vendor could label something like urban single to describe a guest, and another can present the same data point and say it's a single urban living, where those could be the same thing. Also, we expect that there will be changes and updates to this over time. Next slide. This is a final snapshot of the product that we created, where the white boxes represent all the new items. If you want to dig into the nitty-gritty, it's available on the RTN website. And next up, we'll have Robert Peterson from Oracle, who is going to talk about the transactional data standards.
Well, thank you so much, Tammy. All right, so we did an introduction already on most of the team here. There are a couple that also joined that didn't get introduced early or prior. What I want to do is just want to jump in. You know, to me, this is an extension of our weekly work groups that we do. We just have a larger audience. So I really want to start with, as Angela said, adoption. I mean, I was in the meeting at Mertech nearly 4 years ago where we'd held our first work group. It was a live event. It was a very large room. And in the room, the question was presented, what do we need from our industry? What we're asking everyone. And unanimously, brands asked for really two top things. One was integrations between the third-party delivery platforms, and number two was just integrations amongst the platforms. To me, they're both the same thing. It's just the ability to share data, and Phil said it so well. We have done that. And so I kind of have an ask going back now to the brands, which is we really encourage you and ask you and hope that you will, as you go out into our industry and talk to your suppliers, that you ask about the supplier's participation within RTN, their support of it as well. It's instrumental for us to move forward. We knew that the building of the data standard would take some time, but we also know that the adoption of it is going to take even a greater amount of time. So we will continue to encourage adoption. That's a word that you'll hear me say at the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of our presentation today. If you could jump to the next slide, please. I want to just take another snapshot at the time. So this particular work group, the transactional data work group, was the longest standing, nearly 2 years. Admittedly, when I first thought of transaction, I only thought of the order. But as we moved into it, we recognized that the transactional nature of our industry, the operational nature of our industry, there was a lot of the data that needs to be shared. That's not just about the order, and we'll get into that in the next slide. But what's important here is you look at the sheer number of hours in this, this smaller group of people representing our industry, brands, solution providers, and consultants. Most of the time having lively discussion, sometimes disagreeing, but always coming together and moving forward. If you were to run
me, Robert.
we'll get to the party detail later. I promise you. So with that, there is a parallel between, if we were to not have a standard, the amount of work that each individual brands, and you saw the graphic up front that Angela showed, which is just I mean, literally thousands of platforms that are trying to communicate with one another. So that's why we did this. Alex, I want to ask you a question here, because I know both last night and also during our work groups, you have a unique perspective. You live in a lot of the busy work or the heavy lifting of the integrations. So I want to get your perspective on your experience on the time and the effort it takes for you for one project, and what that means to you to be able to leverage the work that we do here to leverage that to thousands of projects within our industry.
Wow. Okay. So you kind of put me on the spot a little bit, Robert, because it's hard to measure how much time and effort and even how many customers we lose by not being able to readily integrate with other software vendors. Over the last 10 years of performing these types of integrations, I can tell you the number one reason why Dataront is losing customers is because it can take 6 months just to plan an integration. And no one's sticking around for 6 months, let alone, probably 1 to 3 months to actually build it. And then maybe another 3 months of testing with live data, because at the end of the day, these APIs inevitably change and are used differently by different customers. So without a standard in place, it's, I mean, if we had to put a dollar value on it for a restaurant to hire a software developer to do it, I would say they'd be lucky if they could get away with $50,000 per software vendor they need to connect to.
No, Thank you for that. And that's really what I was looking for. I'm sorry if I put you on the spot. It's just the, you know, the leverage that we will all benefit from having this common language amongst all of the platforms. I'm going to, you know, shift gears slightly, and George, I want to ask a question of you, you know, from a brand perspective. And again, I'm honored to serve an industry that serves others, and so I feel the work that we've all done here really benefits the brands and the brand's guests. So George, I just kind of want to ask you about your perspective, you know, as we shift into adoption, you know, what would be some examples of the immediate impact, the immediate benefits, and then the long-term benefits of adoption of our RTN standards?
Well, all right, coming from a restaurant point of view, our margins are small, and concurrently, your data integration teams are usually small. There's a lot of workload for very few people. So if I can get data in and I already know the format, I can get a new source to, say, my marketing people at a time where that data is still relevant to them, or they're still excited about the idea. Long-term maintenance, you know, I don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. We just keep chugging along, God willing, and keep putting out good information about our customers, about our sales, about all the rest.
Excellent. Yeah, I had forgot about the maintenance piece. I mean, there's the amount of work that's required to build it. There's always a considerable effort too as well on the maintenance side, especially as systems change.
And I think about scaling. You know, it's easier to grow the data you're going in. It's just astounding how much work you can save if you have a standard from one system to another. Because if you change a back office system from one side to the next, or you know, one app to another because of size, half my work is done if we have a good standard out there.
Yep. Excellent. If you could jump forward 2 slides, I think we're back. There we go. Thank you. So let's tee up, and I'm gonna, you know, kind of get everyone's perspective here on the panel on this one. So I had mentioned earlier that when we first launched the transactional data record, and I should probably even back up further, when we built the 8 key principles, we knew that we were going to jump right into this technical work of defining all of the data elements, the attributes. And at first it was undaunting. It was a large task, but we quickly broke it into, you know, the customer record. We broke it into this transactional piece, which really focused on just the order, at least we thought it would. We also did the menu synchronization up front, because that was one of the first things that was asked, was the ability to share menus with other platforms, specifically with the third-party delivery companies. And as we moved into the transactional record, Stephen, I think it was you that talked about some of the you know, the transactional elements that aren't order related, such as, you know, popping a cash drawer or clocking in and clocking out, some of the time data there. And it quickly, like, you know, opened up this very large piece. And I've heard you talk about events-driven architecture. Could you just share a little bit about that? And for me, it was instrumental when you brought that to the work group. I know you've been with RTN probably a couple years, and when you joined, it was great. You were a breath of fresh air, a fresh new set of eyes, and a really sharp mind. And so I'd love to have you talk about the events driven.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, and also your leadership and Tammy's leadership, and Angela and everybody else's. So thank you. If you think back to that circular diagram that Angela showed, really what we hear from both the suppliers and the brands is that they desire interoperability and interconnectivity. And so if you think about a single event occurring, immediately you probably want 2 or 3 or maybe 10 of those other systems inside of your ecosystem to be able to receive that information. And so that's the definition of being event driven. You know, gone are those days of just like nightly batches of uploading data. Like, you want that single event to near instantaneously flow downstream so all other systems can consume it. It kind of feeds into what Angela described with maybe my legacy will be around having smart systems and dumb pipes, but it's also about allowing for tight integrations with loose coupling, which will speak to what we've heard from some of our other folks on the call today. It's that any brand could then add future capabilities or even new systems as rapidly as they would like. So speed to value, as I think we heard from Phil. And then it also eliminates risk, because if you have a system that's underperforming for you, it makes it very easy for you to migrate or navigate to use a new system and ultimately replace it. And so really being event-driven is the future that we should all be striving to for our industry.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, looking back, I remember when we opened up the discussion around the time card, and I believe on the first call we were like, "Oh, this is easy. This is just clocking in and clocking out. This will take us a week or two." And Christopher, I hear you chuckling. I mean, that the time card piece in itself not only took much longer, but we did also come to an agreement on the, as you talk about the events, which was avoiding the being a smart system. And so we recognized that the payload was quite small. If there was any changes in the punch data, the clock data, that we would just send the entire record over again, rather than building this unique method of storing the information and then recalling it. And so that to me it was instrumental, and also it allowed us to go back and look at some of the other schemas that we had built to truly be event driven, and just to recognize we were better off to just resend the entire record updated and let the smart system figure out the delta, as opposed to working on a complex schema to track the history of all of the data itself. So let me, so Christopher, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but the time card, we're popping into reservations. This was an area too that was quite deep, because it involved the operations of the restaurant. It also touched the customer data record, so there were some pieces there that we changed. I always feel, Christopher, you bring a great perspective of table service. We just by sheer numbers, there are more counter service stores in the US and probably on the globe, but the complexity of a table service environment and the operations there, especially with reservations. So we went really deep, and we took a lot of time on this particular one. And I know that we had come up with, I say we, okay, it was me, I'll raise my hand, and I actually stole it from someone else, the concept of a party, which was just a way to group together individuals on a reservation. And this is one of those areas where, and I'm gonna kind of paraphrase an AWS or an Amazon leadership principle, which is to disagree and commit. And we had a lot of discussion around it, but at the end
we
of
did. I didn't know that was an Amazon principle. I've been saying that for 20 years. So either they stole it from me, or I'm ahead of my time. But we had lots of, you and I had lots of disagreements about, I thought the party thing was unnecessary, but you convinced me ultimately, and we committed. I mean, we disagreed for a while, and then committed, and now that notion of party is firmly embedded in this transactional data to be used by both people that want to use it, I think.
Yeah.
And I want to expand on something that Stephen said earlier, that having this standard, I believe, having been a software, having had several software companies, I think it will make those companies better, because of what Stephen said. If the company doesn't perform, the pain of changing to another partner is significantly less when everybody adopts these standards. And so I think it inspires you to do a better job for your customers, because nobody wants to lose their customer. And today, customers stay often because of inertia. The pain of switching out a POS or a back office system is significant, and this adoption of these standards will lessen that pain, I think.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned something, because I know you've talked before about your experience, and it's so valuable to have in our work groups. And again, that's why I call on you often for the table service perspective. But having built a smart system, not just once, but many times too, you know, it's a unique lens to have and a unique talent on our team.
Yeah, although most of my experience is in quick service, except as an operator.
Yeah, correct. Well, and that's where I think the brand perspective is helpful too. So, George, I'm going to pull you in on this discussion as well too, because I know as technologists and as solution providers, we get caught up in the bits and bytes, and sometimes it's not that we lose track of the guest and what actually occurs inside the restaurant. It's just not what we do on a day-to-day basis, and you do, and we have other brands that participate. You know, I don't know if really I have a question for you as much as I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about specifically within the transactional record and the operational pieces within there, you know, some of the key areas that you thought were beneficial to our work.
The ability to trust that the data is what it says it is. And I've said this in an earlier one, it's when you get data from the system that may be twice removed from where you started. You can trust that data coming from, say, your loyalty program to your POS information into your data warehouse. You don't have to do any magic to make sense of it. It saves you time, it saves us effort, it gives us a truer picture, and it lets us, as folks have said, have a little more flexibility in who we choose as that system two steps away from the original. It's very important for us. I cannot say how much time and effort that would have saved my team over the past year and a half just to get this thing not have to validate over and over again. It's that revalidation, reintegration that is the biggest headache that I have. So,
Yeah. Agreed. Thank you. And Alex, I'm going to jump to you in just a second, but you reminded me of another side project that you and I worked together on, and it's another RTN project, which is our KPIs. And we're working on putting out a standardization around the KPIs, just the most common, and all working through to the most complex. And to bring that to life, to put some pictures into the KPIs, you and I worked on a project where you supplied me with some data, and we worked together to do that. But that that brings to life what you just said, which is you have to trust the data, you have to make sure it is governed, so that when we do move this body of work into a reporting standard or a KPI standard, that we all then are looking at the data in the same way, or it's presented in a picture and a graph that we can all understand and consume in the same way. Alex, so I'm going to jump back to you on the name and the body of the work we did in the transactional piece. And again, you work with this every day. So, and again, I just kind of want to give you a platform to share what this means to you, and any fun stories you have around the bits and bytes of our weekly work groups here.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, so it is it potentially would be totally game changing for our industry. Just in terms of trying to imagine how many different APIs are out there, right? And how to make those connections work seamlessly. It's just impossible to even contemplate. For our company, we have a rolling list of businesses to connect with. And this list just keeps growing and growing and growing, and having one standard to build off of, the ability to build just one integration and make all of our customers happy, would be a total win, not just for us, but for all the other software vendors out there, because they can much more easily close all of the leads that are coming their way.
Thank you. And Angela, why don't you slip to, thank you. You just did that. So this, as we talked about the use cases earlier, and we did this in our last webinar as well too, the use cases really are a proof to our work. And this was our opportunity to pull up some really complex, user stories or use cases to see if we had a schema that would support it. There are quite a few of them here, and there are more obviously on the documentation themselves. I want to take this time as well to talk a little bit about, and it came up in our other ones, we haven't talked about it today, which is the requirement or the need to support the current needs, the current data needs of our industry, specifically with on-premises solutions, as well as the current and future needs of our industry with cloud solutions and more of the event-driven architecture. And there were oftentimes, as we were building, the schema, we would say, well, that's an edge case that I don't, maybe it's not relevant anymore. And coin dispensers is one. We talked about coin dispensers and we talked about the transactional data. And as we collectively started going through our day-to-day, week-to-week lives, we're like, oh wait, I was at an establishment the other day, they use a coin dispenser, and there are coin dispensers, there are a ton of them out there, and it's very relevant. When we talk about the future of payments and it, going away to handling cash, that's not going to happen overnight. And so one of the benefits of these use cases is to go through what may be considered, as we talked about the healthy contention, an edge case. But the truth is these happen all the time, and we need to make sure that we're supporting everyone within our industry. So with that, I have some notes here, and I wanted to ask everyone a question, and I'll just go around the room. If there's either a favorite or one of these, and possible current use cases that you think, I mean, one, we know it won't exist in 10 years from now or 20 years from now, but it does today. And maybe as we started to build it out, the coin dispenser for me is an example. And I'll just open it up to any one of you that want to jump in and grab the microphone to talk a little bit about that. And don't all speak at once. Maybe I do need to call on someone. I want to make sure the question is clear, so raise your hand if.
I think in a group setting it's challenging, but maybe I'll jump into that open space. Yeah, I think, we heard from folks already about the slim profit margins that exist in our industry. So if we accept that at fact, most of us that have also been around for a while know that restaurateurs really love to maximize the utilization of any of their fixed assets. I suspect many people still have, freezers or refrigerators that are 30 or maybe 40 years old, and they just keep patching them to get them to work. And so that's the reality that we face in our industry. To your point, Robert, that you've described, I think we've laid a solid foundation for the data to flow and to support those existing systems today, but we can also rapidly change this. We know that that pace of innovation is only going to continue to increase. Likely, I suspect this group is going to come back to us and say, hey, in phase 2, I would like to get data from these additional systems. We're seeing a lot of sensors and telemetry actually installed into our restaurants. I suspect folks are going to want standards around those kinds of things. And so this team has just established an amazing foundation that will carry us clearly into the future.
No, that's great. And I'll jump in before the next person grabs the microphone. You mentioned phase 2, which I believe across the board, we're going to phase 2 everything is ongoing. So currently the phase 2 for the transactional data record, and I would love to have more brands join, more providers join, but we are working on schedules now. So we've taken the schema around the time clock, the clocking in and clocking out the punch data, and now we're wrapping the entire schedule around that. We do plan to move into kitchen production, which will be a very lively and long work group. And then my goal would be to follow the food supply all the way up to back office and into the warehousing and into the actual production of the raw goods.
I think we want to be driven by our members. You know, what's next after you know, the fleshing out of the labor product. I mean, we think kitchen.
Yeah.
But maybe our members think that there's something else that's more important.
No, it's a great point. And I mean, feel free, anyone on the call, to drop in the chat what you think the next work group should be, or the next direction within the transactional data record should be.
I'm just hopeful the next one won't take 2 years.
Hey, we did phase 2 in the customer record in 6 months, so we have another sprint ahead of us.
So I'm very proud of the work that we've done with this schema, and also with Stephen's contributions to helping to make sure that it's more future-proof with the way that we're doing a publisher-subscriber type model. That's already so incredible and prepares this schema and standard to work for hopefully decades to come. Of course, we can't forecast all the changes that happen in the future of the restaurant industry, but I can tell you that when I first started 10 years ago, refunds weren't that big of a deal. I don't remember ever hearing about a restaurant giving a refund out. Definitely not in your average setting. Maybe with cash they would do it. Maybe with a gift card they would do it. But having it run through a point of sale system was incredibly rare. Although today with third-party delivery type systems, it's incredibly common. The wrong order is made or provided to someone, or that customer isn't happy with the order. That was unforeseeable. And the other really big change that I've seen is surcharging, both pre and post-tax, becoming a thing. You know, surcharges were totally phased out. It was just added to the menu costs, and now it's being listed on a receipt. And even though we had that type of understanding, you know, for whatever, the beginning of the restaurant industry, point of sale systems were not meant to do that type of surcharging. And if you look at most of the newer point of sale systems, they don't really have the capability. So all of their APIs changed over the last 2 years to provide that capability.
Yeah, the refunds, in mentioning that, it reminded me when we built the use cases out. I mean, right out of the gate, we thought, oh, it's a refund, but there were, I think, at least 3 use cases around whether or not it was the same day of the transaction, whether or not the customer had the receipt with them, whether you could recall the order. And again, this went to the support of older systems that didn't have the ability to recall an order to ring a refund, that it had to be rung as an open item. And so, as a negative open item. So there were at least 3 use cases around just the term refund in itself.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you bring up a good point, Robert, that, the schema is usable today by both the legacy systems and the newer systems coming online.
Yep, yeah. And we were careful within the schema to mark data elements that are optional and those that are required. Obviously, in order for data integrity, as George had mentioned, we do want to make sure that we highlight or we pinpoint those areas where the data needs to be, it needs to be required. But there's quite a few for backwards compatibility that we had to make it optional. Well, we still have time and we could continue to talk, but I do want to, Angela, I think it would be great to open up some questions. And thank you for posting this. This is where you can go right now. And I believe right now, Angela, is that right? Is this posted? It is.
It's also in the chat. If you want the direct link to each of the standards, Cody pasted it in the chat here. So absolutely, I think that, what you might want to do is just check out what's available. Usually on the RTN site, we have the book kind of like those screenshots you're seeing on the former slide. It's a book companion document with all of the use cases and some of the graphics, illustrations. And then we have the actual source files, right, to all of this information and the schemas. And then we also have, usually we post the video. This video will be posted under these standards so that you can refer back to kind of what's included from the folks who actually created them. So lots of great information on the site. We encourage you to grab the standards and bake them into your solutions and let us know if you do. One thing we're really trying to do at RTN is put a spotlight on adoption. So if you are using them and you want to tell the world that you are, then we would love to hear about it.
Yes. And I will also, we talked a little bit about this in the last webinar, you know, from a work group perspective, like what does it take, one, to join the work group, to contribute, just from like a weekly basis. So me personally, I do probably every other week, maybe every week, depending on how many groups are concurrent, and they're an hour in length. I have them blocked on my calendar, and Oracle gives me my, you know, I use my community hours at Oracle to provide my service to our industry. It's not a second job, and there's very little homework assignments. We do at times do breakout groups. I don't think we've ever met on a weekend, so your weekends are still free. But if there's any questions you have about, you know, the time and energy it takes to contribute, to be part of a work group, feel free to reach out to any one of us. But I will tell you now, it's not an overwhelming contribution individually, but collectively we do great work, and that's really where we, you know, the more we have in our work groups, the more viewpoints we have, we can get through this work even quicker.
Yeah, I'd like to second that as well. You know, I joined, and I think I've been participating bi-weekly, 1 hour, you know, almost going on 10 months a year or so. And could encourage anyone from the outside, from the field customers perspective, it'd be great to have any of you join. We have vendors, we have consultants, but it's always good to have the customer's perspective. And so feel free. It's great. I mean, it doesn't take up too much time either, and it's fun.
I will say that as a brand, it's been great getting the other perspectives that are out there. You know, it can be very easy just to focus on my particular type of restaurant, my particular thing as we're doing it now. And then you hear other brands, hear the vendors speak up, and it's like, oh, I can do this too. So it's been beneficial outside from just developing the standards.
I would also like to add that all these brands, you know, are collectively contributing to the same mission. So everybody who participates in these calls, if you're a restaurant operator in particular, you can dive in anytime you want, come and go at your leisure, give your use case or tell us your problem, and then go about your business if you'd like. You know, just let us know what you need. And these work groups really roll up their sleeves and really are working for the restaurants collaboratively. I mean, where else in the industry do you see all of these suppliers coming together for the greater good? And really, actually, it's an altruistic work that we're doing to try to ease the pain of the operator. So really, it's a way to jump in and offer your support, and, you know, lend your voice and tell us what's on your plate. Like, what have you seen that's been difficult, whether you're a supplier or an operator or a consultant? What's going on that you've seen out there that we need to fix? And that's really what they're all about. Cody from our team is going to paste in the link here to register for the work groups and just see what work groups we have going on right now. So it's a call to action for you to kind of jump in and check them out if you have the inclination and the time to just come in and see what they're all about.
Excellent.
We have
So
just about
that's
10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I have, Angela. I mean, I'd love to open it up to questions, and I'll let you take it from here. Thank you so much for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Robert. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. We'd love to have you, your voice on the call. I'd love to just, while we're waiting for any questions to perhaps come in, ask just the panelists for some last thoughts about the effort and anything that you may not have been able to mention during your segment. Let's start with you, Christopher. Anything you'd like to?
I echo the other comments. I encourage you to sign up and participate. I think the more perspectives we get, the better. It's fun, and it gives something back to the industry that I think we absolutely need, and it will make us better.
Thank you, Christopher. Alex, any last words for you while I flip back to our most powerful, perhaps our most powerful slide here?
Thank you, Angela. Yeah, I absolutely agree. You know, there's been many calls where I was not shaved beforehand and no one looked down on me. It was quite easy to provide my perspective on things without prepping for a single one of the calls, because it really was just, what's your perspective? What do you think about this? And it was easy enough to answer those questions. And while you can contribute more than that, that's all we really need from all the different perspectives for the team at RTN to put it all together and to make our industry better.
Thank you. And I'd like Mark, if you don't mind speaking up from Consult R. I know that you participated in a lot of this work. Just from your perspective, you come from a different type of background, but you were able to lend a lot of expertise to one particular mission. So tell us a little bit about that experience, because not everybody's going to know everything about all of these different work groups, right? But you came in where you felt like you could contribute the most.
Right. That's where I started. And, you know, my background's pretty diverse. I started out in medical 20 years ago, and funny, we were doing the interfaces, the individual, oh, you want your results to go here. And everything was a one-off project and 6 months and $1 gazillion. And then the cloud came out, and HL7 interfaces and other thing. And that's kind of similar to here, data standards. So yeah, I jumped in an area that I thought I could support. And then, you know, from there, I mean, it's kind of been bouncing around a little bit, but I think that the takeaway is at any point you can jump on a call and contribute. You know, you may be sitting on one call and not have a ton to say, but there may be a topic that pops up that you're very skilled or know about, and you can provide input in that one moment. And that's what I think we're kind of talking about. If you can't commit to biweekly or, you know, consistency, it's still valuable to have somebody pop in, even if they're just listening and just kind of absorbing, because there's been many times that a comment has been made where we're all like, ah, good point. And then, you know, we go down that road. So I'm excited. You know, I've been in the tech space for a long time and worked in various spaces, but I think the main takeaway is with doing this is, you know, the dumb pipes and the data, it's all about data, but the vendors are going to have to get on board with it. Similar to how the medical industry was 20 years ago. The vendors were ruling the roost. You know, everyone was having to pay a lot of money to get their data somewhere else and so on. And the cloud came out. So that whole industry flopped. And at the end of the day, the customer then had control. You know, it's the customer's data. They're already paying for software to use your software to do this and do that. But if it's not all connected, if your tech stack's not slim and you know, narrowed down as much as it can be, you know, you're going to have a lot of operational inefficiencies.
Right.
And that's what we're here to hopefully change.
Right. Tammy, final words on your end. I think you're muted, Tammy.
No, not really in a whole lot of final words, but yeah, I bounce in and out of meetings and try my best to participate. Sometimes I just can't. So it's not really a huge commitment.
Yeah, good deal. Stephen, you've been a regular on our work groups. Any final words just about these standards in particular and the work that you've contributed to? I know we have a lot of other things coming out that are very exciting that you've been heading up. But love to hear final words from you on this call.
I think for me, it's twofold. So first, professionally, I want the restaurant industry to be the place of choice that consumers go to get food, right? They can also go to convenience stores or retail stores or even meal replacement services. The better we do as an industry, the more consumers will continue to choose us over others. So that's the win-win-win for all of us. Personally, think back to how many opportunities you have in your career to knowingly leave a legacy. And we've used that term like 2 or 3 times here on this call, but that's the truth. A standard that you contribute to today is going to be enacted and last for the next 50, 60, or even more years. And so what a rare opportunity personally to leave a knowing legacy. So I encourage all my peers to contribute.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think personally and professionally, that's where it all kind of comes together. Final words from you, George.
Yeah, honestly, the part of the work groups I've enjoyed is realizing I'm not alone in the issues I'm facing. And looking forward to these standards, our business has changed so much the past couple of years, from on-premises to digital ordering, and to knowing we can keep growing in that digital ordering space without too many pain points is just a big relief. And all the folks on these calls have been just completely instrumental in how we plan for this. And having this standard to work with as part of those plans and becoming part of our RFPs to vendors is important and, a relief. So.
Yeah, you're a data guy, but you also see the big picture there. And obviously that's why I flipped back to this slide, because I feel like the big picture is where I think we're going, is where, you simply either will be, omitted from the RFP process entirely, or you might not be given the same consideration if you don't sort of have this in your roadmap at least, or are working towards helping the restaurants to standardize, so that the data that you can get your hands on, that you do own, which is so critical these days, even to have the data, right, that at least it can be shared in a way that isn't painful. Robert, I'm going to leave you with the final words, and then we'll wrap up here.
Yeah, just one last word, or words for Sandy Angel. I mean, she continues to do an incredible job with all of the work groups. She sits in the middle of all of us and corrals our, random thoughts and pointed thoughts, and puts it into a language that, is a technical language. And she just does an incredible job. And I just wanted to say thank you, Sandy.
She is amazing. She's in Europe right now with AHLA. I think they have a conference over there, but we absolutely appreciate and value her work. And she's been instrumental in leading all of our standardization at RTN. So we're so grateful for that partnership. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I just want to leave this slide up for a little bit while longer. If you wanted to scan the QR code, please grab the standards, bake them into your solutions, or take a look at them and let us know if there's something that interests you, or that we omitted inadvertently, or something you feel like needs to evolve, or something that you feel like we need to do as a next step. I know there was a call to action here, is like, what do we work on next, right? And we do have some work groups going on right now, but would love to know what standards we need to tackle next, now that we have these out in the wild, as we say. So thank you again to all of our key contributors. It was an amazing work of time, talent, and collaborative contributions. And we look forward to seeing you all in a future work group at RTN. Great effort, you guys. It's out in the wild now. So well done. Thank you, team.